Hi, so this is our second week of Lent, our Lent journey, and we're following the book by Stephen Cottrell called The Things He Did. And this week we are looking at Matthew 21 verses 12 to 17. He overturned the money changers' tables, and so you can find that in your Bibles, Matthew 21 verses 12 to 17. And what we see here is not gentle Jesus, meek and mild, not what we're used to, not how we think Jesus should be as he goes into the temple and tosses over all the money changers' tables and whips animals out of the building and everything. And my question, first off, was, I wonder what set him off. Did he have a bad night? Did his mum not make him his favourite breakfast? What was it that set him off that day? But I think the most important question is, what does it mean for us? What does it mean for us? What does Jesus's anger mean for us? Because I think in the past I've always been taught that this part of Jesus's life was about anger. It was Jesus got angry, I get angry, so it's okay to be angry if you're angry about the right thing, that is. But I wonder if there's more to it than that. Possibly Jesus was upset about the animals and the money changers being in the temple. But then again, he went there every week. He would have known. He would have seen them before. He grew up as a faithful Jew going to temple. Why would he have that day turned up and gone, hang on a minute, there's animals here and there's money here. What's going on? This is wrong. They'd always been there. That's how the system worked. It was business as usual for them. And business as usual meant changing Roman coins into temple coins, purchasing an animal and offering a sacrifice. Business as usual in the temple. However, I wonder if business as usual was the issue. The animals and the money changers weren't the problem, but they were the symptom of something else that was going on. I think Jesus went to that temple that day for one purpose, with one intention: to throw out and overturn business as usual. See, there are times when we need the tables of our lives overturned and the animals thrown out, because it's very easy to fall into the trap of business as usual. I bet there have been times in your life when you realise that it just isn't working for you. Just going on doing what you're doing is not working for you. And I bet there have been other times when business as usual has left you feeling spiritually empty. And other times when just keeping on, nothing changes. And there's no surprise there. Nothing changes because you're doing business as usual. And it can happen anywhere. Business as usual can happen anywhere. In friendships, marriages, parenting, work, church, wherever. Because it's all about the habits and the routines that we fall into that cause us to sleepwalk our way through our lives. We don't look, but we don't see. We listen, but we don't hear. We speak, but we don't say anything. And that happens whenever we push that autopilot button on our lives and everything becomes mechanical. We go through the motions, we show up, but we're not really there. Have you ever smiled one of these smiles? Yeah, it's okay, I'm fine. Everything's fine. Have you ever done one of those? But behind that smile, you are empty. You're flat. And your heart is breaking, you've got nothing to give. That's carrying on with business as usual. Or maybe you wake up in the morning and you're exhausted as you were when you went to bed the night before. That is business as usual. And have you ever felt like you just weren't yourself? Nothing seemed right. Boredom, no enthusiasm, no wonder, no imagination. That is business as usual. Sometimes you just look around yourself and your life and your world and it just feels all in vain. What is there to me? What is there to my life? What have I accomplished? Who am I? We're busy, but not really getting anywhere. And there's no depth or meaning to it. And that is business as usual. And there are thousands of reasons and thousands of ways in which we fall into business as usual. But in our Christian walk, there's one thing that generally causes business as usual, and that's forgetfulness. Forgetfulness. Business as usual is born out of forgetfulness. It happens every time we forget the beauty of creation. Every time we forget that we have been created in the image and likeness of God. Every time that we forget that after creation, God saw everything that he had made and declared it to be very good. It happens whenever we forget the grace and the possibilities given to us at our baptism. It happens every time we forget that Jesus took the water of our lives and turned it into wine. It happens every time we forget that the Word became flesh and lived among us. And it happens every time that we forget that we have all received grace upon grace and that God will never leave us or forsake us. 1 Corinthians 3:16 says, "Do you not know that you are God's temple and that God's Spirit dwells in you?" See, when we forget that we are the temple of God, the very residence of God on earth, life can become a series of transactions. Relationship and intimacy are lost, priorities get rearranged, and our world gets very small. Making a living replaces living a life. The life that we have becomes a marketplace rather than the place for seeing God in ourselves and in one another. That is business as usual. And that is what Jesus is overturning by driving out of the temple business as usual. See, when the authorities ask for a sign from Jesus about what he's doing, he says, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." The authorities didn't understand. See, they're thinking stone, mortar, temple, but Jesus is talking about a flesh and blood temple. The temple he's talking about is the temple of human life. And he says, in 3 days. What does that make you think of? What happens on the third day? Resurrection. The new life, a new beginning, rebirth, no business as usual on the third day. And over again, Jesus interrupts, disrupts, overturns and throws out business as usual. It was no longer business as usual for the Samaritan woman. She had 5 husbands, lived with the 6th. Now she's a well of living water. There was no business as usual for the man who lay paralysed on his mat for 38 years. He picked up his mat and he walked. And it was no longer business as usual for the 5,000 hungry people on that hillside. They left with full tummies. It was no longer business as usual for the woman caught in adultery. Jesus said to her, "I don't condemn you. Go on your way." And it was no longer business as usual for the man blind from birth, as he said, "One thing I do know, I was blind, but now I see." And it certainly wasn't business as usual for the dead Lazarus who got up and walked out of the tomb. If those stories tell us anything, they tell us that we are not intended to live a business as usual life. It's too small. It's too restrictive. See, Lent is a season that invites us to look at our lives and the way that our lives have become and consider how they become business as usual, and to make changes, to clean them out, to prepare for a new life, a new day, to prepare for the third day. So what does business as usual look like in your life? What tables do you need to overturn? What animals do you need to drive out? What does the temple of your life need today? And more importantly, what are you willing to do about it? Because it's your choice. Only you can do something about it. John 10:10 says, Jesus says, "I have come to give you life, and life in its fullness." Resurrection, new life, new beginning, a rebirth. It's no longer business as usual. See, we're creatures of comfort, aren't we? We like to be safe and secure and to be surrounded by what we know, to be in control and to order our lives the way that suits us. We want our journeys mapped out for us, itineraries decided, tickets booked, refreshments at regular intervals, and a credit card for unforeseen circumstances. But the truth of the matter is, Jesus said, "Follow me." But he didn't say where he was going. We don't know. But he just promised transformation along the way. The Israelites in the desert, rescued from slavery and oppression, what did they do? Messed up again. They were tired, hungry, homeless, thirsty, insecure, and their minds went back to what they knew. They yearned for the structure of predictability of slavery, rather than the broken walls of unknown freedom. They yearned for business as usual. This week, I've added a new word to my vocabulary. A new word which is spelled Liminal, liminal. Liminal. And it means relating to or being an immediate state, phase, or condition. A liminal place or a space is a place of in-betweenness. And in that space, there's an insecurity. It is the Israelites wandering around in the wilderness. It is Paul, blind in Damascus, waiting for Ananias. Liminal space is emptiness. It's uncertainty. It's chaos. It's a place of discomfort and unrest. Liminality is a place of dying and rebirth, of metamorphosis. Now there's another long word. That's the place where the caterpillar spins its cocoon and disappears from view. You see, nothing good or creative comes out of business as usual. And much of the work of God is to get his people, that's us, you and me, into a liminal space and to keep us there for as long as possible in order that we can learn something new and essential about ourselves and about the world around us. God's invitation to us is for us to move from comfort to insecurity, from what we know to what we have yet to discover, from what we're good at to what we might fail at. Now that's scary, isn't it? From a place of safety to a place of risk. 1 Corinthians 3:16. Do you not know that you are God's temple and that God's Spirit dwells in you? John 10:10. I have come to give you life and life in all its fullness. Resurrection, a new life, a new beginning, a rebirth. It's no longer business as usual. Jesus doesn't call us to business as usual. He calls us to that place of liminality, of risk-taking, of stepping out of your boat, of standing on the cliff and looking out, dreaming big dreams and saying, what next, Lord? What next?